Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Thank you. Sizay Kalaycı from Zaman Newspaper, Turkey. If if we will going to move from the social media some terrorist propaganda or any hate speech, what we gonna do about the Donald Trump? I mean, where we can stop that to remove that kind of hate speech or terrorizing people or radicalization, where we can stop that. That's I couldn't get it. I mean, we will understanding which one is the hate speech, or we can go to remove from the social media, which one is not.
Okay. So hate speech is also considered something that violates terms of services. So I think that what really is needed is to determine what delineates hate speech and what qualifies as hate speech to warrant removal. And that's something that we should be discussing with social media platforms. But what we're talking about today is ensuring that they enforce their own terms of services. I mean, why have rules of conduct on a particular platform if they're not going to be enforced, right? So I think this is something that we should be discussing with them. But hate speech is primary. Hate speech has historically been prohibited on those sites. Terrorism is something new. They've actually recently updated their platforms to particularly mention terrorism.
I'm sorry, I'm just following up. But then it raises the question of like, terrorism is nothing, it's not new. I mean, United States, particularly after 9/11, has imposed really very strict laws against anything. I mean, look at NSA. I mean, the government, collaborated with the telecommunication companies like Verizon, and listen to the conversations. And anytime there's some kind of words are pronounced in the conversation, then some kind of machinery gets alerted, and they listen to the conversations. And you have a government that actually has been supporting that kind of activities, which is questionable again. And on the other hand, you have the same government which cannot actually impose on those private companies like social media, Google, Facebook, Twitter, name it, and say, listen, you guys have to do something about it. I mean, so to me, it's just doesn't make sense. Or are we just going to sit and let things, unfold?
So I wasn't clear about your point there. Can you make it again in a simpler sense? What are you confused by?
I'm confused by that terrorism now is using social media more than ever.
Sure.
But, it's not something new. Al-Qaeda was,
Sure.
using the same tool.
Yeah.
And if we go back to, before September 9/11 and afterwards, this country has taken a very harsh measurements to track down anybody who might have any affiliation with any terrorist organization, particularly Al-Qaeda. So I'm saying today we're faced with ISIS.
Yeah.
And everything pretty much, takes place on social media, the recruiting, the funding, and so forth. And then, and this country, this United States also has used NSA to listen to the private conversations of their citizens.
Sure.
And I'm saying, why now it's so difficult to, utilize social media companies and track
why hasn't government clamped down on social media companies efficiently yet? Sure. What is the reason for that?
Well, the reason is because we're talking about the U.S. There are few acts now that would amount to something that violates the law. Incitement to violence, the communication of a true threat, providing material support to terrorism for a foreign terrorist organization. Those are the three things. If we were looking at another country, if we were looking at the UK, it would be the encouragement of terrorism, the dissemination of terrorist publications, right? But here, these few exceptions that exist are what we utilize in order to prosecute individuals who are engaging in these behaviors, utilizing these platforms.
Because ISIS is not too proactive yet in the United States compared to European countries.
No, some of the behaviors, for instance, the distribution, the existence of something online, for instance, or the expression of support for a particular group, that's not considered an illegal behavior in this country.
Her point is really